Welcome back to the table, friends. I'm your humble host, Gray DMs, and with me as always is Owen.
Hello.
So, Owen, once again, you are going to teach us something, huh?
Maybe. I guess. I don't know if anybody is interested in this particular topic. I found it pretty interesting, but it's kind of what happens when people become major fans of something and the owner of the IP says, we can't have that. But yeah, so for over 4 decades, Games Workshop has cultivated a dedicated fan base through its iconic Warhammer universes, inspiring hobbyists worldwide to paint miniatures, write stories, and craft animations, and even design unofficial games.
Yeah, I'm straight.
As technology evolved from early internet forums to YouTube animations, Patreon-funded projects, and sophisticated 3D printing, the creativity of Warhammer fans flourished, expanding far beyond traditional tabletop gaming. Yet, this explosion of fan creativity brought Games Workshop into an ongoing, contentious battle over intellectual property rights. From legal crashes and high-profile cease-and-desist campaigns to nuanced debates around creative freedom and ownership, GW's aggressive stance has sparked controversy and backlash within its own community. So, today we're going to talk about the intricate history of Games Workshop's IP enforcement and examine how new technologies challenge traditional ideas of ownership and creativity. It's the story of passionate fans pushing the boundaries of their beloved hobby and a company determined to protect its valuable trademarks and the ongoing tensions between corporate authority and community passion.
I mean, let's be clear. It's the story of a British villain.
Yeah, it is.
And because they're British, they get away with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, just because they're British, they get away with it isn't a thing. But I feel like the way they did it, because you think about in corporate America, it would just be like, we're going to squash you and we're going to ruin you and we're going to do everything to make you look bad and us look good. Where Games Workshop is just like, we're going to tell you to stop and then we're going to insist that you stop. And then we're going to tell you why we insist that you stop. And then we're going to make sure you never do it again, but politely.
The entire time, the entire community is going to be like, hey, that sucks. You guys suck. Give me more plastic.
Yup. So today, we're going to talk about the contentious war for the soul of Warhammer. So, in the early 2000s, Warhammer fans began building online forums, fan fiction hubs, and hobby websites. GW initially allowed fan sites under certain conditions such as non-commercial use, and they requested that there were disclaimers, but tensions simmered as fans occasionally posted copyrighted material. As the internet made sharing easier, like PDF rules, summaries, scans of game content, and so on, GW grew wary of unchecked fan distribution of its IP. So, GW established basic fan site guidelines during this era, though enforcement was sporadic. Fan-made content like custom game rules or lore compilations often flew under the radar, as long as it wasn't directly competing with GW products. However, this laissez-faire period began to tighten by the late 2000s as GW developed a reputation for defending its IPs viciously. The stage was set for a more heavy-handed approach once fan activity grew large enough to notice. Around 2009, GW launched its first major crackdown on fan-driven content online. Several incidents in late 2009 showed GW's new zero-tolerance approach towards unlicensed use of its game materials. GW sent a cease-and-desist letter to the popular Board Game Geek website demanding removal of all fan-made gaming aids for GW titles. This included community-created scenarios, rule summaries, reference charts, and even scans to replace worn components for out-of-print games. In response, Board Game Geek wiped these files. Fans were outraged. These free aids only increased the value and playability of GW's games, yet GW's lawyers ordered them gone. Commentators called this move senseless. Games Workshop seems to be attacking its biggest fans by ordering Board Game Geek to take down all fan-made player aids. Tech writers and blogs alike Boing Boing and Tech Dirt lambasted GW for declaring war on its best customers and undermining fan goodwill. GW simultaneously issued roughly 50 cease-and-desist letters to fan-run websites, notably those using GW trademarks in their names. For example, multiple Blood Bowl communities sites were hit. The NAF, an International Blood Bowl League, had to change its domain from bloodbowl.net to remove the trademark term. Another forum, Talk Blood Bowl, was instructed to shut down or at least remove Blood Bowl from its name, take down any GW-derived content, and even remove its donations button. GW was enforcing its Blood Bowl trademark during a renewal period, which likely spurred this flurry of legal letters. Even Fumble, a long-running online league that let fans play Blood Bowl matches via a Java client, was impacted. Its software had used GW-owned art assets, which were promptly removed under threat of legal action. The Fumble owner reported in November 2009 that while they hadn't yet received a letter, numerous related fan sites had been hit and were scrambling to comply or rebrand. The fan community reacted with anger and disappointment. On forums like Daka, users decried shutting down fan sites as ludicrous and counterproductive to their business. Dedicated hobbyists warned that if vibrant forums or resources were closed, their own interest in GW's games would wane. In one example, a contributor to the fan site Dark Reign, which focused on Warhammer 40k RPG material, argued GW's claims were baseless and likely fair use, noting that accepting donations isn't the same as selling GW's IP for profit. Nonetheless, many fan projects folded or went underground in the face of GW's legal pressure. In hindsight, 2009 was a turning point. Technological changes like easy file sharing and fan forums had enabled the flourishing of fan-created Warhammer content, and GW responded with an across-the-board crackdown. GW justified these actions as necessary trademark defense, showing they policed use of names like Blood Bowl and protection of their copyrighted game materials. However, this came at the cost of significant fan goodwill and theme that would repeat in years to come.
Mm. Yeah, it's so fucked up. Like it's
and this was around when we first started getting into it, wasn't it?
Yeah, the dates kind of line up because like definitely it's that transition period from the TV selling to paper selling.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember like how that went, but it is pretty close. But also like the world was different at that time because we still like you would look up stuff on forums, like on forums about this stuff, and you'd be like, "Oh, that's what this is," but it wasn't like there were these collated news sources. I mean,
no, everything was spread out, and you kind of had to find your own information yourself.
Yeah, it wasn't like the rapid fire kind of social media that it is now. So we probably like just missed a lot of it. And likewise, if you don't get exposed to wargaming, like GW wargaming at a young age, if you run into it in the US, there is this weird like Harry Potter element to it where you're like, what is this weird thing? And I think we were just in the midst of that.
Yeah.
So we're like, have you heard of orcs with a K?
Yeah, it's got a K at the end. Crazy.
Yeah.
Are these some kind of rip-off of Blizzard and World of Warcraft?
Well, let me tell you a story, friend.
So GW's aggressive IP stance continued into the early 2010s, culminating in high-profile legal battles. Two major events defined this period: a lawsuit against a small fan-based business and an attempt to trademark a common sci-fi term. Both instances galvanized community backlash and forced GW to confront the limits of its IP rights. In 2010, GW sued Chapter House Studios, a tiny company making unofficial Warhammer 40k conversion kits and models. Chapter House's products included things like alternate shoulder pads and alien creatures, items clearly inspired by GW's lore, some even filling gaps for models GW hadn't produced. GW alleged massive copyright and trademark infringement. The case dragged on for years and in June 2013 ended in a very mixed verdict. of GW's 160 plus copyright claims, only about 1/3 were upheld. Chapter House won on the other 2/3. Notably, GW failed to claim ownership of many generic terms and concepts. A jury found that features like the basic shape, size of Space Marine shoulder pads were not protectable by GW's copyright, and Chapter House's use of GW's trademarks names on its website for reference qualified as fair use. GW lost all 9 of its broad trademark claims outright. In the end, Chapter House had to pay only $25,000 in damages and was allowed to keep selling many of its products.
That's like I guess I don't know how much you probably know about this, but our readers or listeners probably don't. So like if you've been in the hobby, especially the wargaming hobby for a long time, if you've been around since 5th edition, or like this happened, I think during 6th maybe, then you know that we went from a period of time where we had Space Marine, the Imperial Guard, and Sisters of Battle. And then when we came back, we had Adeptus Astartes, the Astra Militarum, and
Yep.
That's all.
We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
So the Chapter House case was a double-edged sword. On one hand, GW succeeded in establishing that some of its creative designs, certain specific characters and unit sculpts were protected. But on many other points, GW's overreach was exposed. Fans cheered that Chapter House opened up a Pandora's box of legal precedents against GW, as one analyst put it. The suit inadvertently highlighted how much GW's universe borrowed from older sci-fi tropes and generic ideas. It also taught GW a costly lesson. Going to court could backfire, setting legal limits on GW's IP claims. In response, GW began adjusting its strategy. After 2013, GW started giving factions and characters more unique, trademarkable names. For example, around this time, the Imperial Guard were rebranded as the Astra Militarum, aiming to be more on-brand and avoid generic terms. GW hasn't pursued a similar full-blown courtroom fight with a fan creator since, preferring quieter takedowns over public trial. The Chapter House saga, though, left a lasting wariness in the fan community and emboldened the cottage industry of third-party miniatures that carefully operate in the gray areas the case highlighted. While fighting Chapter House, GW also drew infamy for trying to trademark the term Space Marine outside the tabletop context. In late 2012, GW's lawyers demanded Amazon remove an ebook titled Spots the Space Marine, written by an independent sci-fi author M.C.A. Hogarth, on the theory that Space Marine in the title infringes on GW's trademark. This claim was widely ridiculed because Space Marine had been a generic science fiction term since the 1930s. Hogarth publicized the situation, explaining that fighting GW in court would be prohibitively expensive without pro bono help. The fan and author communities erupted in protest. Corey Doctorow of Boing Boing accused GW of bullying and trying to co-opt the legacy of science fiction writers by claiming a basic generic trope. Under mounting public pressure, and with clear legal precedents against them, GW eventually backed down. The book returned to Amazon, and GW's attempt to control the words Space Marine became a PR black eye. This episode reinforced GW's litigious reputation. Even mainstream tech media coverage how GW's trademark seal had gone thermonuclear. It also hinted at GW's mindset. As the company moved into ebooks and media, it felt compelled to protect their IP, even to ill-advised extremes.
It's so ridiculous. I remember because I remember when this happened a lot, but it's so stupid. Like, have you seen? They came out with a commemorative sergeant figure a couple of years back, and it's clearly the dude from the first Predator movie, the guy who played. What's his? He was in Rocky.
Yeah. He died recently.
Yeah.
Can't think of his name, but I know who you're talking about. It's the meme, where they
son of a bitch. It's clearly that dude.
Yeah,
like 100%. The only difference is he has a power fist on.
Right.
And it's like that company who's clearly like in so many things throughout all of their products, ripping off pop culture, was going around going, "No, Space Marine's ours."
Carl Weathers.
Carl Weathers, yeah.
I couldn't think of his name. Yeah, no, and I don't know. I kind of feel like they're just going to keep doing more of that and then trying to trademark this stuff.
They're the aristocracy. Like, they're just like, oh, the peasants are mad. Oh, well, we won't increase prices by an extra 10% this year. Oh, we're so sorry, but next year we will.
We'll increase it by 20%.
We have to make up for our profits.
So during this era, GW often cited obligations to defend its IP as justifications for these actions. Trademark law does require a company to police its trademarks, hence the Blitz on Blood Bowl fan sites and the Space Marine claim. Furthermore, by 2013, GW was facing business pressures. Sales were dipping and cheaper competitors were emerging. Enforcing IP was a way to eliminate what GW saw as unauthorized competition, whether a competing miniature maker or a fan distribution, free rules. However, the way GW enforced, perceived by heavy-handed and lacking nuance, led to worsening community relations. By 2013, GW had a reputation for being, as one fan commented, exceptionally greedy and holding its fans in contempt. This reputational damage would later put GW to soften its public image temporarily. You could tell that fan was probably British.
Temporarily.
Yes.
Temporarily.
Oh. So, from 2014 to 2017, GW's approach to fan creations entered a somewhat quieter phase. With the Chapter House case settled in 2014, GW had clarified what it could and couldn't control. A new CEO took over in 2015, and GW made overtures to mend fences with the community by opening a Warhammer community website and engaging on social media. During this time, some fan projects thrived, but others still drew GW's ire, especially as new technologies emerged. Notably, some high-profile fan films were allowed to move forward in this period, suggesting a brief ease of tensions. One example was The Lord Inquisitor, a fan-made CGI film project by Aramis Brosdow. Launched in the early 2010s, this Warhammer 40k animation project gained a lot of attention. Rather than shut it down, GW ostensibly allowed Lord Inquisitor to continue as a strictly non-commercial endeavor, with the creator even adding disclaimers like 100% unofficial and fan-made on release. In August 2016, a polished 8-minute prologue was released to the public to fan praise. The fact that this project wasn't immediately quashed indicated that GW, at least informally, was tolerating some fan films at the time. The likely reason, Brosdow sought no crowdfunding and planned no profit. Thus, GW didn't view it as a threat, and perhaps even saw the buzz as beneficial marketing. Similarly, early fan animators on YouTube, like the creator for Astartes, posted their work in 2016 through 2019 without initial interference. These creators operated in a gray area, technically unlicensed, but gaining community goodwill. GW's stance in the mid-2010s seemed to be look the other way as long as it's not for money. This relative peace, however, was setting the stage for conflict once fan content started reaching larger audiences and revenue.
As soon as they spelled money in the water.
Yeah.
It's so stupid because, like, I think one of the reasons why they were so hesitant to go after the Inquisitor one and Astartes was because of that stupid Space Marine movie they made.
Yeah.
And everybody was making fun. They're like, this sucks. Like, this is a horrible thing.
Yeah, I had actually pushed that out of my memory.
You have the golden child, like, subject matter, and this was the best thing you could do. This is like this crappy CG movie.
Yeah.
And so I think they were like, oh, okay, let this cook for a little bit. Let's get, oh, wait, is it time to strike? Is it time to take that?
Well, it always makes you wonder, though, too, is if they kind of gave their blessing on these and they're just like, well, if we couldn't make something good, these fans are probably going to make absolute garbage. And then the fans will see how good our movie was.
And the 5-part Astartes thing makes like the most reaction videos of any video of all time, of all these like grandmas, like, what is this Astartes thing? That guy got blown in half. What else? Huh.
No, it's very good. If you're not familiar, go check it out.
And the dude's now on their payroll.
Yep, we'll talk about that. Even as GW eased up on fan movies, it quietly enforced IP on the realm of digital utilities. The rise of mobile apps and online tools for Warhammer games was one example. So Battlescribe, a popular third-party army list builder app launched in 2011, quickly became indispensable to players, but it used GW's unit names and stats in its data files. In 2011, GW's lawyer sent a cease and desist to Battlescribe's developer, forcing him to remove all GW data from the app's website. To comply, the creators separated the app from the data. The app itself would be generic, and fan volunteers would provide Warhammer unit data externally. This workaround allowed Battlescribe to survive, but GW's actions sent a message that official rules and unit profiles were off-limit for fan apps. Likewise, fan-made companion apps for reference PDFs for Warhammer had to stay low profile or risk similar letters. Fans on one forum noted that another fan-made list builder had been forced to shut down because he included GW unit images in the app, a direct IP violation. After the 2009 to 2010 shutdowns, fans remained wary of coding any unofficial Warhammer video games. One Stack Exchange user in 2015 remarked that GW is famous for taking legal action on any unlicensed digital game, noting that the last known attempt, a Warhammer 40k module for the Vassal tabletop simulator, was shut down with a cease and desist. Indeed, Vassal, as an engine for playing tabletop games online, had a 40k fan module that GW lawyers managed to stifle around the mid-2010s. Similarly, a long-rumored fan project called Chapter Master, a PC game simulating Space Marine chapter management, was never publicly released. Fans believe GW's legal threats killed it before it saw the light of day. The pattern was clear. Any fan-made game or software that replicated GW's game experience or imagery was a prime target for enforcement. GW's IP guidelines explicitly banned fan-created computer games even then, although this would be reiterated more loudly later. By the late 2010s, hobbyists began to obtain affordable 3D printers, and a new wave of fan creativity emerged: 3D printed proxy miniatures. Fans sculpted their own models inspired by Warhammer units, or even scanned official models and shared the digital STL files on platforms like Thingiverse, Shapeway, and Patreon. This directly challenged GW's core business of selling miniatures and plastic. GW quietly fought back. They scoured sites and issued DMCA takedown notices for any user uploaded models that were obvious copies of GW designs. For example, a user printed Space Marine armor bits or Tyrannid creature from a fan file would often find the file removed after a GW complaint. In one noted case, GW targeted a seller who was ripping 3D models from the Total Warhammer video game and offering them for 3D printing. When simple DMCA notices failed because the seller filed counterclaims and kept going, GW escalated to filing 12 separate claims with the new U.S. Copyright Claims Board in 2023. This eventually came to light in 2023, but the underlying activity spanned the late 2010s through the early 2020s. GW's filings accused the individual of illegally extracting GW-owned 3D assets and monetizing them via Patreon and Etsy. This showed GW's willingness to adapt to new legal tools for the 3D printing threat. Already by 2017, community anecdotes abounded of GW issuing takedowns on Shapeways and similar services for hosting fan-sculpted Warhammer proxies. And in its later published policies, GW made clear that using a 3D printer to replicate their models is strictly forbidden. So the mid-2010s saw a brief easing of open conflict. Some fan works flourished, and GW focused on quieter policing. But this was the calm before the storm. By 2019, new platforms like YouTube, Patreon, and 3D printing marketplaces had enabled fan creations to reach huge audiences and generate income, setting up the next major crash.
Blood in the water.
Yeah. And like I've said several times before, I found it cheaper to buy a 3D printer than it was to buy a Warhammer army. Significantly cheaper.
I mean, I'm trying to think of anything. Is there anything hobby related that is more expensive than a Warhammer army? Like in the hobby of gaming, like
in the hobby of gaming,
of like
probably not.
Tabletop, yeah. Like you have to get into like, oh, I'm going to buy a $4,000 drone.
Yeah,
or I'm going to buy a whole new computer.
Yeah,
like you're
even then, like, oh, you want to buy a whole Warhammer army? That probably costs more than a nice.
Yeah, like computer. I mean, to get the gray plastic, most armies you're talking in multi-grand.
Yes.
That's just it's insanity for what you're like. It's just a nuts. And anyway, like we can get into the rant later.
Well, it's like, it's a situation where it's just like, I need to build a computer. How much, like I want to build a gaming computer. How much is that going to be? It's like, well, if you want the best video card, that's like the 5090, it's running over $2,000. Like, oh, so like half of a Warhammer.
Yeah, you're like, so three Imperial Knights?
Yeah.
2.5 Imperial Knights? Okay.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I have files for those, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, not those. I have things that you can use as an Imperial.
Yeah, yes. The other game that we play, the one-page rules game that we play, is not affiliated with GW.
So one flashpoint came just before GW's biggest crackdown of all. In mid-2020, GW publicly confronted a YouTube content creator over the use of its trademark. A YouTuber known as Arch Warhammer had built a following with Warhammer lore videos and commentary, but also courted controversy with offensive political takes.
Yeah, okay. Now I'm catching up with this. Yes, I'm remembering this.
In June 2020, GW released a statement titled Warhammer is for Everyone, denouncing racism and hate in the community and making it clear that those who spread bigotry are not welcome. This is widely seen as indirectly targeting Arch and his segment of the fan base. Shortly after, GW and Arch became entangled in a trademark dispute over his channel name. Since Warhammer is GW's trademark, GW forced Arch to remove the word from his channel title or face legal consequences. Arch complied, rebranding his channel simply as Arch. Vice News noted that this name change was prompted by a recent trademark dispute with Games Workshop. Essentially, GW leveraged its IP rights to disassociate its brand from an individual whose values it deemed harmful to its image. This incident had mixed reception. Many fans supported GW's stance against hate speech, while others, especially Arch's followers, saw it as corporate overreach into community discourse. Regardless, it demonstrated GW's willingness to wield IP law in new ways, not just against fan creations that threaten profits, but also to police the brand's reputation. By asserting control over the Warhammer name on YouTube, GW set a precedent. Even a fan channel's name was not off limits if it conflicted with GW's interests. This set the stage for GW's broader moves against fan content on YouTube and Patreon in the following years. So I found this one interesting because I don't know how I feel about it. So I agree with them in the fact that, hey, we don't want our name associated with this guy.
Yeah, it's like, get our brand out of your mouth if you're going to be saying that stuff.
But at the same time, it also means, hey, we feel that the name of your thing is too closely related to something that we do, and we don't want you to have that. Even if you're not spouting hate speech or something like that, it still just kind of turns into a thing. It's like, you need to change your name.
Yeah, it's the aristocracy.
Yeah.
It's like the rich landowners are just like, oh, wait. Oh, peasants. Oh, there's a loophole in which you can go claim land in the forest?
Oh, no, we can't have that.
Oh, okay, that's legal, but hold on a second. Magistrate, could you fix the law? Like, it is. It's privileged and a privileged upper class, in this case, a business who basically can change the rules in the way, this
it just benefits them and fuck everybody
else.
else.
And they're like, oh, if you're placating us and keeping us in the loop and not making money, heaven forbid.
Yeah. You don't need money. You have us.
Yes, we are the tax that you need to pay.
That's right.
And if you do that, we'll make all your silly videos.
Yes. Eat, sleep, and die.
Basically.
And consume. Okay, 2021 marked a watershed moment in GW's IP enforcement. The company was preparing to launch Warhammer Plus, a subscription service featuring official Warhammer shows, and it viewed the thriving ecosystem of fan-made videos and animations as direct competition. In July 2021, GW updated its published IP guidelines with a stark zero-tolerance policy on certain fan works. For the first time, GW explicitly banned fan-made films and animations set in its universes, even if non-profit. The guidelines stated unambiguously, individuals must not create fan films or animations based on our settings and characters. These are only to be created under license from Games Workshop. Fan-made computer games and apps were all similarly prohibited in the updated rules. This was essentially GW blowing the whistle on all unlicensed digital content that looked like a movie or a game, no matter how lovingly made by fans. The news sent shockwaves through the Warhammer community. Many beloved fan projects went dark almost immediately, notably If the Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device, a wildly popular parody series that had run for 8 years.
That literally was responsible for people getting into Warhammer during COVID.
Yup. So they announced an indefinite hiatus in late July 2021. Its creator explained that a future under this GW, or at least these policies, is untenable, and that he would need explicit permission from GW to ever continue. This was a heartbreaking moment for fans. TTS was a humorous introduction to 40K for many, boasting hundreds of thousands of viewers. Other fan animators followed suit. Smaller creators like Sodaz and Mark Lewis Spark, known for the fan film Death of Hope, similarly ceased work, either out of fear of legal action or from direct contact by GW's legal team. In some cases, GW did reach out to fan animators, not only to stop them, but to occasionally hire them. For example, the creator of the acclaimed fan series Astartes was approached and officially hired by GW to produce content for Warhammer Plus. This carrot and stick approach meant some fan talents were absorbed, their work now appearing behind GW's paywall, while the rest were simply told to stop. As one commentator wryly observed, GW's recruitment of the Astartes creator was seen as the kindest possible way an IP holder could have handled a fan animation, effectively a very civil cease and desist that comes with a job offer. But these exceptions were few. Most fan animators felt simply forced out. The community's response was explosive. Fans took to Reddit, YouTube, and forums to voice outrage at GW for cutting off a source of passion and creativity that had, in their eyes, only grown the hobby. The Warhammer meme subreddit G Grimdank locked itself down in protest. Sorry, that should have been R Grimdank.
Yeah. I was like, huh?
Yeah, nope, R Grimdank. With moderators accusing GW of stabbing the community in the back after profiting from fan content for years. Vice reported the fandom was in revolt over GW's zero-tolerance fan animation policy. Memes and posts lambasting GW flooded social media. Even some of GW's most loyal customers reconsidered their support. There were calls to boycott the upcoming Warhammer Plus service, and in online hobby groups, fans canceled pre-orders of subscriptions in disgust.
Did you get into what their organized protests were? There's some of them were really good.
What were they?
There was this whole protest that you basically everybody was being told to mail your empty sprues back to GW. Which was awesome because it pissed off.
Oh, yeah.
Stop sending us these packages of empty sprues.
There's probably some people that just had boxes.
I know. Just like, I'm going to send each individual one. This is how petty I am.
Wow. Yeah. So one Reddit moderator summed up the sentiment. Content makers are pillars of this community. To stab these people in the back after years of profiting from their work is unforgivable. The backlash was so intense that it garnered mainstream attention. Gaming outlets like PC Gamer and Vice covered the story of Warhammer fans turning against GW's new policy. GW, for its part, did not do much publicly to calm the waters. The IP guidelines spoke for themselves, and Warhammer community articles briefly explained that these moves were about protecting Warhammer's future. Insiders and analysts reasoned that GW didn't want to compete with unlicensed animations now that it was selling its own. Moreover, many fan animators had Patreon accounts earning significant money. For example, the TTS team was reportedly earning over $180,000 per year via Patreon, essentially making a living off of GW's IP. To GW, this crossed a line. GW and many corporate IP holders argue that once fan creations become commercial, they are no longer just fanish enthusiasm, but an unlicensed competitor. Indeed, GW's updated policy explicitly forbade any direct monetization of fan content, no ads or prepaid fan films, and reserved such projects for official licenses. The timing, right before Warhammer Plus launched, made GW's motives clear. As PC Gamer noted, these changes coincide with Warhammer Plus rolling out official animated series, some of which originated as fan projects before GW co-opted them. In short, GW was consolidating control over audio-video expressions of Warhammer. The damage to GW's reputation among longtime fans was significant. A portion of the community indeed boycotted Warhammer Plus or encouraged others to do so. GW's YouTube channel, Warhammer TV, suffered a campaign of dislikes and angry comments from fans who felt betrayed. Prominent YouTubers outside the official fold openly criticized the company. It was a moment of rare unity among disparate Warhammer fandom corners. Hobby painters, gamers, meme makers, and lore nerds alike were furious that GW would hamstring fan creativity that has sustained interest in their universes for years. I feel like they're talking about orcs at that point, because it's like the whole thing with orcs is the reason they don't overrun the universe is because they're fighting with each other. Yeah. And now GW just gave them all something to hate together.
Yeah. But like, okay. My thing is, and this is the thing that still baffles me, it's not so much that GW did this or that they have this opinion or this is how they do things. It's that in many ways what they do is just corporate shit. Right. It's like a corporation is an entity like an amoeba. And like we should never worship it because it's self-serving and it is an enemy. It's not an enemy, but it is another predator out in the mix. And you can never like be like, oh, that's my friend, because it will just consume you.
Right.
And so GW doing these things is just a corporation acting in its own self-interest. So is WotC. And we kind of scored a win on WotC. But nobody really scores a good win on GW.
No.
And that's the thing that baffles me. Because like they have these two things that are true. As a corporate entity, they are as corporate as possible in all the worst ways. As like a provider of miniatures, and as like the owner to an IP, they have one of the most bafflingly seductive IPs in the world, and they produce some of, if not the best miniatures in the world. So you live in a world where both things are true, and people just constantly get seduced back by what they own, and then they look over and they're like, you're not bad, right? And GW's like,
they're your drug dealer.
There you go.
I mean, it's 100%. It's just like, hey, there's this thing. You're not doing something bad, right? Like, this isn't going to hurt me or anything. No, it's fine. Just take another hit, You
can hate your drug dealer and still have a working relationship with
Absolutely.
them. That's a very good...
as long as you keep throwing money at them, they're never going to have a problem with them.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they're like, hey, man, as long as you're paying your tax. I mean, is that the... Do you have more? Is at the end of...
No, there's more.
Okay, well, then we'll let you go. I don't want to chime in just yet on my final opinions.
So some fans drew dark comparisons to other companies. For instance, how Paramount had handled Star Trek fan films with initially permissive guidelines until one project went too far, or how video game studios often let fan mods thrive. The consensus among vocal fans was that GW's move was legally within its rights, but hypocritical and short-sighted. Hypocritical because GW itself had benefited from the buzz generated by things like Astartes and TTS, only to shut others down once it had its own services to sell. Legally, observers noted that some parody content, like the satirical TTS, might even win a fair use defense in court, but no small creator could afford to fight GW's legal team. Thus, creators bowed out, hoping maybe for a policy change someday, but fully aware that GW had all the power and intent to enforce. By the end of 2021, GW had effectively extinguished the area of freely distributed fan animations and unapproved Warhammer video content. The fan community's relationship with GW was at a low ebb due to what many saw as a corporate flex against its own fandom. This was perhaps the largest example to date of GW's IP enforcement causing public fan backlash and even mainstream criticism. Yet despite the negative press and anger, GW held firm on its policies going forward. In the aftermath of the 2021 crackdown, GW continued to enforce its IP with vigilance in other areas. If anyone thought GW might quietly relent after seeing the backlash, that hasn't been the case. Instead, GW appears to be doubling down on protecting its franchises across all mediums while fans adjust to the new normal or seek alternatives. One of the last bastions of fan-driven content has been the unofficial rules databases like Wapedia, a website hosting comprehensive, up-to-date Warhammer 40k rules and stats for free, essentially replacing the need for certain GW books or the official app. Wapedia operates from Russia and for years coexisted, albeit in a legal gray area. By 2024, however, GW took steps against it too. In late 2024, Wapedia's owner reported a series of cyber attacks and a cease-and-desist notice from GW. The site experienced downtime and instability, suggesting either GW's direct action or pressure on hosts. Spiky Bits, a hobby news site, noted that renewed crackdown on intellectual property by Games Workshop and that it remained to be seen if Wapedia would be forced to remove content. As of early 2025, Wapedia is still online. Mirrors and the resilient nature of the internet make such resources hard to kill completely. But the writing is on the wall. GW intends to push even harder to funnel players into official sources for rules, like their official Warhammer 40k app or printed codex books. This is in line with GW's policy that fan websites may not repost substantial chunks of official material, a policy often flouted by Wapedia's comprehensive data. The conflict here is illustrated. GW sees sites like this as piracy of their rules, where many players see it as a necessary convenience given the cost and complexity of official publications. And then, as mentioned earlier, GW took the novel step of filing claims with the U.S. Copyright Claims Board in 2023 to combat a prolific provider of illicit 3D models. This move was significant because the CCB is a new mechanism, a tribunal for small copyright disputes, and GW, a UK-based company, leveraged it to target a US-based individual. The target, known online as eManG, had been extracting 3D character models from GW licensed video games and offering them on Cults 3D and Patreon. GW tried the usual DMCA routes and even a direct cease and desist letter, but the individual was unresponsive. By filing 12 coordinated claims, one per infringed model, seeking statutory damage, GW signaled that it was willing to innovate legally to deter the 3D printing threat. It proved that GW will go beyond informal notices and actually litigate, albeit in a small claims forum, to defend its model copyrights. The Plagiarism Today blog noted it was unusual for a big company to use the CCB like this, but GW likely chose it as a cost-effective way to not invest a great deal of money in a case that may have uncertain concerns. In other words, GW is getting more tactical with its enforcement, choosing battles it can win economically. In this environment, many fan creators have shifted gears. Some animators and artists have redirected their efforts into original sci-fi projects to avoid GW's IP, or moved other franchises with more permissive policies. A segment of Warhammer fans migrated to other games altogether, looking for communities where fan mods and art are embraced rather than stifled. For instance, after 2021, online chatter increased about games like BattleTech or Dungeons & Dragons, whose owners historically allowed more fan creativity. Sometimes. Even within Warhammer, fans now self-censor, avoiding the use of GW trademark names in their online posts, like using humorous euphemisms for factions to dodge automated takedowns. On places like YouTube, you'll find lore channels carefully saying the faction that must not be named in reference to Space Marines to play it safe. Fan 3D sculptors who still create Warhammer-esque minis market them with oblique labels like Galaxy Knights instead of Space Marines to avoid direct infringement while catering to communities. In short, the fan creation landscape post-2021 is far more cautious and underground. What used to be proudly shared on public forums is now more likely to be whispered about in private Discord servers or gated Patreon pages with coded language. A cat and mouse dynamic between creators and GW's enforcement. Despite the online outrage, GW's business has not visibly suffered in the short term. The Warhammer IP is stronger than ever. It's expanding into mainstream media. A live-action TV deal with Amazon was announced in late 2022, for example. GW's stock prices and sales have remained robust through 2022 to 2024, thanks largely to the quality of their miniatures and the loyalty of their gaming customer base. However, reputationally, GW faces a lingering narrative that it is hostile to its fans. Nearly every time GW issues a new cease and desist that becomes public, it reinforces an image that GW will clamp down on a lot of stuff, and even fan art isn't safe. That could have a long-term cost if a competitor with a more fan-friendly approach arises. So far, GW seems to be betting that protecting its IP aggressively is worth the risk. They likely view the cost of not enforcing, like losing legal rights or ceding market share to fan-made alternatives, as higher than the cost of some bad PR on Reddit. Indeed, GW's legal teams often stress that not enforcing could lead to losing trademark exclusivity or letting fans establish precedents that weaken their copyrights. In their eyes, they must act to keep Warhammer theirs. Over roughly 2 decades, Games Workshop's stance on fan creations has hardened from ad hoc guidelines to an explicit zero-tolerance regime. Technological shifts, forums, file sharing, YouTube, Patreon, 3D printing, each open new avenues for fans to express their love of Warhammer, and in nearly every case, GW eventually responded with legal force to rein those in. The chronology shows a repeating pattern. Fans innovate and expand the universe in unofficial ways. GW's initial quiet tolerance gives way to crackdowns once the activity grows large or lucrative, and a cycle of backlash ensues. GW's motivations, like protecting its IP and ensuring its profits from any Warhammer-related content and maintaining brand control, are plainly visible in its actions. And while GW has every legal right to set these boundaries, the community's enduring disappointment is equally evident. Many feel that Warhammer's richness comes from its fans and that GW's heavy hand only hurts the hobby's growth. As 2025, the battle between GW and fan creators continues. Some fans hope GW will eventually adopt a more permissive fan policy. Yeah, right. But others note that even in the grim darkness of Warhammer's fiction, the corporate fortress of GW shows little sign of lowering its defenses. For now, Warhammer fans' creations live under GW's watchful eye, a state of play that will likely persist until community sentiment and business calculations convince GW that a bit more hobbyist freedom could be good for the long-term health of the franchise.
Yeah, they're bastards.
It sucks. I agree, but at the same time, I also understand why they do it. Because look at World of Warcraft. Like, that's kind of...
Yeah, I don't know if that's a... So, okay, like, let's separate a few things. So, dear listeners, none of you are listening, so that's okay. So this is just going to be re-ranting. This is just for my own purpose. I need to get this out. There are a bunch of behaviors that they do that they have to do.
Yeah.
So going after like any type of company that makes a game or something that is built on their IP, they have to go after them. Those things make sense, right? Mm-hmm. There's like, that's a bucket. Then there's the stuff they do that is just shitty. And the shitty stuff, like, so for example, there's so many different facets of this. So for starters, GW wants, they benefit a lot from people painting their miniatures. Mm-hmm. So they send their miniatures out to like painters so that basically they can like paint.
Look at this, make a showpiece.
Yeah, exactly. So that's this huge thing they do. They have a bunch of videos and they just, I don't think they've made the switch in their head of like, oh, we should shut down other painters. I'm waiting for them to do that. But anyway, they're painters because they used to have this guy, Duncan Rhodes. And Duncan Rhodes was like one of their big painters who would come out and he'd be like, I'm going to teach you how to do this.
Yeah.
He got to the point where he's like, I make a salary and I'm one of the most like known painters in the world. I'll just go do my own thing. And GW was like, that's awesome. Nobody's ever going to know who any of our painters are ever again. And so all of a sudden, like their names are stripped out. They only see their hands painting now. They don't want any faces. They don't want any like basically personas because they fear someone's going to walk away with some stuff. And I'm like, you dickheads. Like it was perfect to then go introduce a couple more people and grow their careers. Like this only benefits you. You're just trying to have too much. You want too much. And then on the flip side, like across all their practices, this is pervasive. Like their model selling practices are so horribly predatory.
Yeah, I was going to say they're very predatory.
Like right now, they're preparing to release a box set for Death Guard and a box set for World Eaters. The sole purpose of the box set is that one of the miniatures is new and you can't buy it for 4 months without buying that box set. Like, fuck you. Out of all the wargaming, I mean, like this is, to my knowledge, I don't know of another company that does this. And I'm sure someone could throw out in the comments, well, no one's going to do that because no one's listening now. But if somebody did, I'm sure maybe there's like one example. But to my knowledge, GW is the only one who has decided that their rules are worth money.
Yeah.
Like the components that you need to sell an IP. Like if me and you, if Gray and Owen sit down and we create the greatest IP that we ever like, and we're like, oh man, this is so cool. We love this thing. We need to share with you like what it looks like. We need to get the lore built out, and then we need to get like the rules of our game out to everybody. GW's like product. Yeah. Like those are products. We're not going to let you have those. We can only like, no, the reason people pick up and want to paint a Space Marine is not because of the few people in Britain who walk into a store. All of Australia and all of the US and all the other places, they don't have GW stores the way normal, like
the way the UK does.
Yeah. So they go online and they're like, hey man, what is this thing that's in your, I don't know. Oh, hey, I'm going to go watch someone like, I don't know, Voldemort or Sandman of Terra, and I'm going to listen to some kind of crazy British dude with a hypnotic voice telling me about these futuristic spacemen who are like doing these freaking awesome things halfway across the galaxy and fighting like these crazy, and you're like, this is so cool. But none of that is GW.
Right.
And so, like, you can't get into the hobby. You can't begin to buy their stuff unless you're one of these small people who go to a GW store. You can't get into their stuff without having this just ecosystem of people funneling you to this game. And then every time one of them starts getting a little bit of money to support themselves, you just got to come down and be like, stab. Too big.
And when you really look at it too, I wonder, like, we're not in with the young crowd. How many young people are getting into the actual hobby of wargaming with 40K? Because the way I look at it is like, hey, buddy, you just turned 16. You just got your driver's license. Time to get your first car. You want to drive, right? Great. I'm so glad you want to drive because it'll get you there. You can take your friends places. You can only buy a Ferrari.
This is like Ferrari.
Yeah, it's a Ferrari. That's it. You want a Ferrari. You want a Porsche. You want a McLaren. Those are your choices.
Yeah, cars are called Ferraris.
Yeah.
So what Ferrari do you want? Oh, you can't afford a Ferrari? Well, then you can't afford to drive a Ferrari, and that's all that works. Oh, what are you talking about? Like a 10-year-old Honda Civic? That's not a Ferrari.
That's not a Ferrari.
That's not a Ferrari. That's not a thing. Oh, we're using the word Ferrari too much. I mean, like, and their ability to weather the storm is crazy. Yeah. Like 1-page rules, an entire rule set that copies every single model they have so that you can play it without buying their books, exists and has started tournaments and started like selling their own models and stuff. And like not even a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. So,
well, part of it. So I think a lot of it is the lost cost fallacy?
Yeah.
Where I think so many people have invested into it. They're like, I can't just give this up or turn myself away. And I'm infected, so I have to infect others with it. And I have to make them feel bad if they don't join in and do it.
I think you just did my therapist's work.
I saw the look on your face when I said that.
Yeah, that hurt. Well, it's just tough because like there's a guy at work who's like a really good example of this. And he's kind of like, he's into the hobby in a way that we would have been at that age if the internet was the way it is.
Yeah.
And so he kind of knows the buzzwords. He knows what he's playing. He's trying all this stuff. And he did get into it because we kind of, but he like knew about it. He had done it before. He
just needed that push.
Yeah.
I've heard about heroin. I've never tried heroin.
You know, like I've always been, I always had place for the needle to go in and I was just waiting for someone to ask me.
I grabbed a marker and I found my veins and, you know, I haven't really like done it yet.
But it's like, that's my problem with it is that there's just, okay. So Archon Studios has the rights. So for those of you who don't know, Archon Studios is a Polish company that is basically rapidly chasing after GW in terms of their ability to produce plastic product. And they got the rights to StarCraft, which is hilarious because StarCraft is a dig by Blizzard at GW, if you don't know it.
Yeah, I kept saying WoW, but I meant StarCraft.
Yeah, that's it.
The other Blizzard.
Yeah, so it's really funny that like they got the rights to that, and they are making a miniatures game at the same time. They're going to make a board game, so I think their miniatures game is not something that can ever compete.
Yeah,
but even if they did, even if they got StarCraft, which is a bigger IP across the world because of the success of that game, I don't care. Like, because as awesome as StarCraft is, and I would get into that game, I would play that game, I would add it to my repertoire of all the things to do. The depth and the allure of all of, like, whether it's Age of Sigmar, Warhammer the Old World, or 40K, Necromunda, like,
it is so cool. Like that's what drives me absolutely nuts about it is I can hate the company as much as I want. They still put out a product that I really like.
Yeah.
I don't even have to play the game. I can just read the books, read the comics, you know, watch the programs that they've put out. And it's just like, these are all really awesome.
Can listen to British people do Shakespearean breakdowns of the Horus Heresy for hours and hours at an end. And I'm like,
it's just so good.
So good. And then you've got this aristocracy company sitting there going, well, yes, of course, because it's a divine right that we have this, you know. And you're like, no. Like a year or two before I was born, you were hucking D&D minis through an order system. None of this existed. Like, this is all GW, the real devil.
Yeah. Gotta shut off that golden throne, man.
1,000 sectors a day. All I could say, I guess my wrap up is that as much as I love the lore and as much as I love them, this whole podcast basically is why we will never be lore shills for them.
Yeah.
As luring as that fast as that YouTube recommendation is like, hey, why do you talk about Warhammer? Like, no.
Yep. No matter how much you pay us, GW, we will not shill your lore.
I mean, it would have to be a decent salary.
Yeah, I mean,
5-year contract.
Right. You know, multi-year contract.
Gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to leave it at that.
Okay.
See ya.
Bye.